for EHiN. Vi har de siste årene bygget opp et stort program rundt E-Helse, og der kan dere se på den roll-upen som har stått ute i gangen, og selvsagt også i programmet til Arendalsuka og på vår nettside. Dette er vår første sesjon. Vi har samlet sett 18 sesjoner over 3 dager. I will change to English as we have a foreign guest and we'll do this session in English, which I hope is okay for everyone. But the topic is very Norwegian. We will talk about the health reform utvalget, which is a project we're working with in Norway this year. How are we going to make healthcare services to be more integrated into the future? How can we support clinicians in their work, and how can we support citizens and patients in their pathway through healthcare? The focus will be on how technology can support the work of Health Reform Committee with lessons from other countries, and we will get that from Northern Ireland, amongst others, and how integrated digital infrastructure can help to develop and transform the healthcare system. Because we all know we have the technology, and we all know we are using a lot of money and time on it, but we still see that it's not really working. To that we have Dr. Dermot Hughes from Northern Ireland. He's the former Senior Responsible Officer in Health and Social Care. We have Logan Boelse from Epic, which is organizing this session with us, Department Director and Customer Manager. You live in Trondheim. You're close to speaking Norwegian, next year maybe, but you understand Norwegian. You said 80%. We have Katrine Skrede Mortveit, som prosjektleder samhandlingsoptimalisering, avdeling for E-Helse og teknologi i Helse Møre og Romsdal. Og Tarje Bjørgum, who is the leader for the health and sustainability at Abelia. But first we want to invite Dr. Dermot Hughes on stage to tell us how Northern Ireland has managed, or maybe not managed, to integrate the different levels of healthcare. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very privileged to be here. My name is Dermot Hughes. I was the senior responsible owner for the Epic implementation in Northern Ireland. And if you look it up in ChatGPT, it says it was very smooth and very good. There's obviously failures in AI because it was a roller coaster ride. It was quite complex and quite difficult. Despite having integrated health and social care in Northern Ireland, we have social care, social work, community care, mental health and acute care, all managed under the same 5 organisations. So that structure was already in place. General practitioners are individual businesses, and while funded by the Department of Health, they're very much individual businesses. So we made a decision quite early on that we would integrate everybody else except general practitioners. We link with general practitioners through Epic Care Link, which means they can see their patients live time, and they can make orders and place and receive documents, but they're not integrated onto the Epic platform as yet, and maybe we'll talk about that in a while. We had an initial business case, which did seem to be reasonably generous, but it focused on the IT. It focused on the build, it focused on the kit, it focused on everything except transformation. So the first thing I had to do in 2021 was to ask for more money. And that meant our lifetime business case went from 1.55 billion over 13.5 years to 1.95 billion. And that's because of the inflation, etc. And we asked for 110 million specifically to employ external contractors because we didn't have the skills in Northern Ireland, but also to fund clinical and social care staff to do the transformation. This was called out as the major transformation for the healthcare service. They actually didn't fund the people in the service to deliver that change. And that sounds rather self-evident, but it's a very common mistake that is made with IT implementations. You have to have those that are delivering the care and those that are receiving the care funded to do the change. And that was the major change that we did. We did a sequential process where we did 4 implementations over 5 healthcare trusts, which meant that instead of having a big bang and everybody relax and trying to put that into the past, that we sequentially learned from what we did. And those that were about to go live could go to the trusts that were live to learn on the systems in advance. So we moved from reasonably high levels of perfunctory training to people having training, personalization, and experience in advance of go live. That made it incredibly more safe, but it actually took a huge amount of work. We trained 85,000 staff, and it was a very positive thing, but very hands-on. Our major issues were the integration with general practitioners. We had the general practitioners on our board of governance. We had a council for general practitioners, and I religiously turned up every Wednesday to speak to the general practitioners, because part of the job was just being there and listening and being what we call servant leadership, to make sure that those delivering care, and we have to remember that those delivering the IT system in trusts were also currently delivering care. So they were doing multiple jobs at once, that you were sure that they knew that you were there for them. What are the drivers for this in Northern Ireland? It's a relatively poor area in the UK. It's much poorer than our colleagues in the Republic of Ireland. The post-COVID, our life expectancy has decreased, and more importantly, our healthy life expectancy has decreased. The gap between social class 5 and social class 1 has widened. So the system is failing, and we have to get our head around that doing more of the same will not produce the solutions. I've been personally involved in opening a new graduate entry medical school. Great, we get more doctors. Doing the same thing won't make the difference. And I think this is where we've had a successful implementation, but we have to ensure that the politicians, and if there's any politicians there, that's just the start. And the hard change is changing the service we deliver. If you ask patients, what do you want? They'll want the same thing, but maybe more of it, or maybe sooner. But radical change will be something different. It'll be targeting social determinants of health, which we will be able to do, not on a population basis, but on an individual basis, so that those who need the care most will receive it. Perversely, the NHS, which is free at the point of care, if you check the data, it's those with the most ability in social class 1s and 2 actually have an easier access. So that is something we have to change. One of the important things that we did became a mantra was it wasn't an IT implementation. It was clinical and social care transformation. And I think you must remember, when you do an IT implementation, that the vast majority of the people you're working with just want to do their job. They just want to treat patients. They just want to see their clients. And if you talk to them solely in a digital world or a digital language, you won't bring them with you. And you have to have, everybody has to have their own why. There has to be a win for everybody in the organization. And you have to talk to people on the terms of what will be their win. And I think that was the thing that we drilled into. I think the other thing is you have to be aware of this. This is huge change for any one system. And there is sort of exhaustion at the end of it. So you've done an implementation, you've trained 85,000 people, you've disrupted the organization, you've had downturns in activity, and the next thing you want to say is, right, let's start doing things differently. And how you manage that change is very difficult. But I think the best way to do it is say it from the start, to say, this is the beginning, and now you have an opportunity to change for all.
Participants on stage, well, on the floor, I would say. Dermot, Logan, you can all come up and stand there somehow on that side or that side, that's okay. First, Katrina, You work in the mid-region, where you also have a lot of effort to integrate the different services. Can you tell a little bit how you work with that?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Katrina. Thank you for the invitation. I'll just start with a brief summary of the project that's been going on up in mid-Norway. I suppose you've heard of it. It's called Helseplattformen. All in all, it spans from 34 municipalities and all the hospitals and health trusts. Altogether, about 40,000 employees, and 71% of the population is covered by a municipality with the shared electronic medical record. I work at Helse Møre og Romsdal as a project manager, where we're trying to see if we're actually utilizing and realizing some of the benefits of having the same shared infrastructure across organizations. And yeah, we see some of the benefits. There is a lot that's just happened, I think. Clinical diagnosis and critical information, medication, clinical frailty assessment scale, for instance. These are data that follows the patient through across levels and transitions. But we also, so in sum up the project that I lead, we have seen, which is the cooperation between Målet, Ålesund and Kristiansund kommune and Helse Møre og Romsdal. We have seen that there is still a lot to do, and just making people sort of reflect upon, you actually have a real-time system now. You're not that dependent on sending e-messages or to find the information. It's actually there. We have the shared digital infrastructure. And just to sort of make people realize that is a journey. So we have had an insight phase in the project where we did a live simulation of a fictional patient. We gathered the clinicians together in the same room like this and sort of clicked our way through from domestic care into the hospital and out again for a frail elderly patient. And just sitting together, talking about the same problems, primary and specialist care, that was extremely, that was very learningful. And we had a lot of epiphanies because we want the same thing, but we have a different perspectives. Like you said, Dermot, it's people just go to their work and want the job to get done. But we need a more holistic we need a more holistic way to work, I think, and set people together. And when you talk about changing the shift into more preventive care, I think that's what the shared digital infrastructure really enables us to do. So a shared digital infrastructure is good, but it's only the starting point, really. The governmental and organizational boundaries and cultural work, and as well trusting that what people have done before me, I can reuse. I don't have to do it again.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. So
how do clinicians react on that, because they want to have their own tests?
Yeah, I think that's sort of the ryggmargsreflex.
I don't know. You know what it is in English?
Yeah.
Ryggmargsreflex.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that I have to do it right now again to get my own clinical assessment, and but still, I think we could be better at reusing and not do as much as duplication work as we do today. So yeah, that was sort of my points.
Terje, you've been working with health politics in Norway for quite a long time, and kind of frustrated once in a while that things are not going as quickly as you want, we want. We have been discussing that through times. Now we have this health reform. We hope that it will leap us ahead into the next round. And I know you have been sending quite some advices to the Commission and are into this. How are we going to make this happen in Norway?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, as I My point, my take here is that on a little bit different angles. I come from Arbelia, a part of NOU. We represent 3,000 different companies, research institutions, tech, and so on. That we see as, we don't see that the healthcare transition will, it's not possible to do that without integrating the whole ecosystem, also the business departments. So, but what we are thinking that might happen now is that you have a tradition of that health, the policy for health IT, e-health, it's going on one path, but the health politics in general, they are discussing often something else, and they are not often linked together. So what we see that is that, okay, everybody agrees on that we have large problems. This is the biggest sector in Norway, and we are all a part of it, but that means radical innovation, not just putting electricity on the old ways of working. But what we are afraid of is that the Helsereformutvalget, they are about flipping boxes, see who has responsibility, will it be the municipality, will it be specialist healthcare, and so on. So we have to do whatever we can to choose the organization model that really takes technology in and transform the way we are handling the services. So, and then we are also, so what we say, how can we let the largest amount of innovation happen together with the people working there and so on. And that is why we distinguish between what is an integrated healthcare service and an integrated IT system. So we have been on study trips to different countries. We've been in Estonia, and we see that they have a complete different way of doing it. Estonia is not a bad country. It's a very good healthcare system, and they are using like 6.9% of GDP on health. We are approximating 13% Norway. So we use more or less the double money. But what they do is they set a course. This is where we're heading for the transition, and they leave to all business to compete and develop all the services. But the government is in charge. So how can we learn from that kind of countries also in the way we are doing it, I think.
That's interesting. Yes, Estonia is an interesting country. We might come back to that. Logan, you're working for Epic, which is one of the main providers of healthcare systems in the world, with quite a lot of hospitals and organizations, stating quite clearly that using technology is not depending on Epic, but it is a good example for how you can do it. And you have, as a company, quite a lot of experience in different countries, how you integrate healthcare services and what works and what does not work. So can you elaborate a little bit on where we are in Norway? And
yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about Epic, I think, to kind of lead into that and kind of help understand the experience. So we are in 16 countries currently. 17th Germany will be in the next couple of years. Over 3,500 hospitals and millions of healthcare users, and then a few 100 million patients have their records inside of an Epic using organization. So it's very interesting to see the healthcare reform here, knowing that Denmark has recently gone through one. We have seen reforms in the NHS system. Northern Ireland went through their version of reforms as well. And to be able to kind of look and see what role does technology intentionally play in that. I had an opportunity to speak with a couple of members from the Helsereformutvalget just before the summer, and my message there that I shared with them is, it can sound very good to say we are going to flip boxes, we're going to reform, we're going to have a new way of handling reimbursements, but so often we back that up with saying, and new technology is going to enable us to do that, and don't really finish off the rest of that thought there. And what we need to do is very intentionally think about the culture changes and architecture changes that are necessary to build an ecosystem that allows that, so that we do have a target that we are aiming for together, and the technology is meant to solve a problem heading in that direction. So I think I was very excited the opportunity that Dermot could join us, because I think Northern Ireland, as an entire country that is integrated on a single system, both provides a good example of some of the benefits you get from that, as well as the challenges that still come with that, even though you might still be talking and using the same system. Seeing the work that Målet Romsdal is doing with the commune there and the House of Hodetakana has been inspiring and important too, to say, you know, in order to do innovation, we don't necessarily need a bunch of brand new things, right? We need a new way of thinking and using the tools that we do have, and a new way of trusting each other and how we work, so that if we do shift the responsibility boxes around, if we do shift the way that reimbursement happens, we now have a dialogue open to be able to understand how we can best work with each other, use the technology that's available, and then if we do need additional technology, can aim that in a problem-oriented capacity, as opposed to just inserting it to see whether or not it works.
Okay, so Dermot, Katrina mentioned the word holistic, which is very interesting. It's a very good word, but it's also a word which can disappear very quickly. As long as we're in the same room, we say we're working together, but then everybody's coming back to his own service, and the health service getting very fragmented. How have you managed or not managed to make this more holistic system and make people understand the other parts of the healthcare system?
Yeah, holistic is sort of warm and fuzzy, and it describes a process. You really need to focus on what your outcomes are. So you won't say changing how we work to work in a holistic way unless it is a benefit for the patients in terms of productivity in the system and outcomes from that system. In Northern Ireland, our healthcare struggles both in terms of productivity and throughput, but in terms of quality. So we've been subject to 4 significant public inquiries into various aspects of healthcare. And from that, there's been a legal requirement to use the electronic care record as a patient safety tool in all sections of the healthcare, so in the private sector and in the public sector, so that we will have a very holistic approach, so that the patient owns their own data and can carry it through wherever they choose to have their care. And I think the hard question will be that we just can't do all we do currently. And there are things in the health service which are of less value or of minimal value. And we need to think hard on how we focus on what makes the biggest difference. I was in Grimstad at the moment, and this is a bizarre thing to say. I was walking to the beach, and I saw a kindergarten, well-staffed, well-organized, and that's made me think it's where people come from. Our biggest challenge is those who have social deprivation, and our biggest challenge in the health service comes from the groups that have less access and a poorer start in life. And if we're going to make a change, it's not a change in a hospital, it's not a change in a huge institution, it's a change in society. And I would say you're very much further ahead on that. Unfortunately, the political climate is kind of not in that direction, and healthcare gets mired in this discussion about how we can invest in those that don't have. But we will be able to have the data. And when you get the data, you'll have an irrevocable argument.
Yeah. Katrien, so one of the biggest breaches or walls we have is between the hospitals and the municipalities, because they're different budgets, totally different ways of organizing, and they're trying to throwing the responsibility to each other. And so you've been working with that, because this is one of the main targets we have to succeed with, to bring down that wall and make them really to work together.
Yeah, was there a question? I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to bring those down those walls, because I think maybe, like, as the situation is today, we are, yeah, for the patient, it's only one journey. From the patient's point of view, I think actually the idea of one citizen, one journal was quite good. It was in order for them not to tell their story over and over again, and the critical information follow them through. But for the clinicians, it's a lot of different things, and you have this. All of those transitions are also with them comes regulations and demands of now it's your responsibility, and now it's your responsibility, and it was it's like you sent him to us before he should have been, and it's a lot of discussions on that. You have in Norwegian a term called svingdørspasienter. I mean, we should move beyond that and in a larger way think that we are one team. And I think that the governmental and structural, the structure should support that for us to, I mean, we always talk about holistic and seamless patient pathways, but we need incentives to support exactly that. So that's a hard task. I think everybody agrees on it, but
we do. Yeah.
But how to actually do it, that's the hard part. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you mentioned this one citizen, one patient record, this is like 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
And we have not managed to get there, even though everybody agrees on it. And Tarjei, that's maybe one of the problems, that we have a lot of good visions in Norway, but somehow we don't manage to materialize them. Why is that? Is that because everybody's seeing too much on his own, like the king on the hill? And when it really comes to changing things, we need maybe a stronger political driver, because we see that now the European health data space is actually telling us what Norway should have been done for 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. But it's a big question. It's also about the småkong in Norge, as you say. But I also would like to pick up on what Dermot said, that we're not talking about incremental change here. It's a radical innovation of the whole society. And today, like, we don't have the people working there. We get older. We have to do really big changes. And like you said, in the municipalities, it's like we use now 3% on forebygging, but mixed together with data, you can really shift the whole way we're treating patients and get them active in and so on. So, but what I said when I started that, it's like e-health policy, it's left off to the like tech people. So when we talk with the Helse- og omsorgskomiteen in the parliament, they are not very good into this. They are there because they have like health issues. They want to do a little bit in a policy way. So how can we do that? And we have also set up a debate that everyone seems to want. You have 4 regional healthcare agencies. You have Norsk Helsenett. You have all these actors trying to do the same, more or less, and they get into their feet on everyone. So and we have like a minister saying we are going like this.
That way.
But they send the message down to the health directorate. They send the message down there, and so that is the holistic trouble. We really are not incentivized in how to work together in Norway.
Yeah, it's strange. We'll come back to that also later today when we have the health minister here to talk about, and of course when we come to the health reform. Logan, you clearly state that it's much more than the EMR, the system. If you want to change, you have to change also the cultural part and organization and much more of that. But I often have this discussion. So people say, yeah, but technology is just a tool. And then I say, if I look to the world, I see technology is changing the world by the technology we have. So we have kind of to look to the technology first before we make decisions. Because if you have a problem at a hospital and you try to find a solution to it, I think that's the wrong angle. But that's my opinion. So, but now we have AI, for example, just falling over us, and nobody knows exactly what it is. But I think Epic is working pretty much with it. So how do you see the balance between the technology as a driver and the organizational, societal part as a driver?
Yeah, I think that with the advancements in AI, we're really having to wrangle with these tough questions now, because all of a sudden the culture and the regulatory and the technology pieces are coming together much faster than they were before. I've gotten an opportunity to do some road tours through Mid-Norge and a couple of other places as well, talking about what's coming with AI advancements, how do we build a tech ecosystem around AI that is Norway oriented. And one of the things, especially at the hospitals and municipalities, I've said, is that in order to get the value proposition that we expect out of AI, you have to think of it as a triangle. And at the bottom, you must be doing the things that you need to do well, in order to actually get AI to do what you want it to. Assuming that you can put it in and go from doing 30% well to 90% well isn't going to work, right? It could take you from 75 to 95, perhaps, but it's not going to get you all the way there. If you paper it over bad policies, bad ways of collaborating, it's only going to exacerbate those concerns. And so I think a good example, where we see both the regulatory and the policy as well as the cultural thing. I remember early on in our go live waves in central Norway, Trondheim municipality kind of made most of the decisions about how should the interaction work between the hospitals and municipalities. And they took a very open and forward approach on it, actually, and said, we should be able to see a decent amount of information back and forth, right? That is a big part of the value proposition of having an integrated system. That message didn't make it to every municipality, though. So we had some that saw the same exact information as Trondheim municipality, but we're putting in avviks to Datatilsynet saying, I see way more than I should. This isn't right? I work in a health station. I should only see what I should see in a health station. Anything more than that is a breach, right? And we had the same policies everybody's reading from, right? But just a very drastically different way of approaching it. And so if you put AI in to that municipality, they're going to take it very differently than what Trondheim might, for example. And so you need to have a cultural understanding of how we should use these tools, what access, what collaboration should look like in order to actually get the value that you're hoping for.
Okay. So if anyone has a question that we have a possibility to ask, do we have a microphone? Cora, can you deliver a microphone? We can use this one.
Thank you. My name is Lise Lote. I'm from Grimstad. You talk about the hospital system and the commune. And what I'm hearing is the ones that are funding the hospitals, funding the communes. I'm not hearing about the other healthcare providers in the primary sector that is not funded by the commune or the hospitals, like the private physiotherapy and chiropractors and manual therapists. And they are so important when it comes to preventive care.
Absolutely.
And you talked about how you had to have an economic incentive in order to get the private sector to be part of your program. And I'm wondering, up in Helseplattformen, how do you integrate the sectors that are not the commune or the hospital?
Interesting question. Can we get the mic back? Maybe we can have another microphone for questions. Yeah.
To ask how we integrate the physicians and so that's not on Helseplattformen. Or maybe Logan also can help me answer, but right now the answer is that it's like through the regular ways, through e-messaging, PLO-meldinger.
Yep. They also have access, so Dermot mentioned Epicare Link, which is kind of an extension portal that we have, where they're able to do things like go in and place orders and receive results. And so, yes, the e-messaging standards are still followed, but we have actually seen a lot of great success with Fastlega wanting to still be able to enter orders into HMN Lab, kind of read a little bit of information about the patients. And while they don't document inside of the Epicare Link system, they are still able to do a little bit and receive some information back. So they have actually been very happy with that solution in Mid-Norge for now. And we hope at some point they want to kind of continue on that collaboration path. And then as Dermot said, they're doing something a little similar in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, we use Epicare Link extensively for non-NHS healthcare providers, so opticians, optometrists, and a wide range of people who need access, appropriate access to deliver their care. Because I think if it's going to be an inclusive system, it has to include all aspects of the care. And we now have, for sad reasons, we have a legal requirement to make that available to private providers of care, and that's the platform. But Epic CareLink is a web-based, simple tool that's easily accessible and can give people the information they need to deliver their job. And,
Okay.
and it costs nothing to the provider.
We have a question over there.
Det greit å stille på norsk? Kan jeg stille på norsk?
Ja.
Jeg er jo opptatt av integrert helsetjenester. Jeg kommer fra Troms fylkeskommune, jeg er tannlege. Hvordan ser dere tannhelsetjenesten inn i en integrert helsetjeneste? Vi er jo en del av jobben rundt helsereformutvalget, så jeg er litt spent på hvordan man tenker rundt det.
Ja. How we integrate these healthcare. It's a bit the same direction as what she had.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
I can say, so in the US specifically, dental care integrated in the medical journal system has become very large. So we have dental-only organizations that also use Epic, and using integration touch points, they're actually pulling in medications and things that are happening inside the hospital, because your oral health is critical to your medical health as well, right? And so even in the last 10 years, that has become a much larger part of it. In St. Olav's, the maxillofacial surgeons have been saying, can you please give us this as well? We want to be able to work in the same way and see the same information, but have tools specific to us. So I think that is a very good message for Helsereformutvalget to think about, because with the dental services completely divorced from the Helseforetakene, I think we are missing a significant part of how we treat and care for our patients.
Which, by the way, Tarje, is fully integrated in Estonia, as we have seen there. So, and we at EHiN, by the way, work actively with the physiotherapists, dental organizations, psychologists, to get them into the EHiN atmosphere of talking about digital health, because we think it's very important. So Dermot, what you have been coming quite some steps along the road, but what are the biggest challenges to get really the fully integrated system we could dream of?
Yeah, the integration from community care, who were going from paper to an electronic system, actually worked much better than we could have imagined. And some of the challenges were people on a senescent system that they currently had in the way they were used to working. So social care was a bit of a challenge in that it's a bureaucracy heavy, legalistic profession, and they had a system they liked, but the system varied across 3 trusts. It was individualized to such a degree it couldn't talk to one another, and 2 trusts didn't have any system. So it's actually migrating people off something they like into a new system, because everybody agrees the global better is, one solution for all is better, but they're very resistant to giving up. I think some of the challenges were not about the digital. Some of the challenges was about standardization of care. So one trust would have 7 ways of assessing Alzheimer's disease, where all other trusts had 3. So you were having a professional discussion to say, why are you the exception? Why are you the outlier in the room? And that was a process that funded clinicians took through. So that wasn't really a problem. But I think standardization of care, I think the unspoken thing is it's a really exhausting process for maybe a period of 2, 3, 4 years, and then trying to get everybody to start thinking again. Historically, we've done transformation through the quality improvement route, which are minute changes in episodic places by keen people all over the system, and it just ends up with a scattergun approach, and perhaps changing from a standardized system to an unstandardized system. So the big challenge is about stopping that and understanding the power of doing it for all at once. And that's a cultural change. And that is the change we haven't fully achieved.
No.
But if you're going to do it, it has to be for everybody, and it has to be demonstrable, and it has to be on the basis of data, not opinion.
Okay, you can give it to Katrine. So Katrine, you're also on this road. What can you do yourself, and what do you need from the politician makers in Oslo? How can they help you to succeed?
I think, well, my focus is very on the practical approach. So I often start with the local, where it has to start, and the leadership and the trust across different levels and the transitions. But of course, in order for that to happen, we need the policymakers to also understand the challenge and what they need to do to support that. So we need both, of course, and I just hope they understand it, because in the municipalities and between the hospitals, I feel like it often is a blame game, and we need to remove us from that. I just want to add for your question, because I feel like the physiotherapists and ergotherapists, and they are completely left out.
Okay.
And it was a quite interesting lecture yesterday with Harald Eia on how our health is made up by both psychic and physical health, of course, but we sort of separated, and that continues out in our digital infrastructure, and that needs to be improved. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Tarje, Epic is obviously a big vendor in this area. We also have quite some other vendors in Norway, which are doing all kind of big and small stuff. Are we good enough in Norway to bring this innovation to the table and into the healthcare system?
Apparently not, I think. Well, but if I would say, if you're going forward to the Helseformutvalget, what they should do, I think that we try to invent everything also in the national domain here. We do that we have to think a little bit broader. And for us, it's like we have to distinguish a little bit about what is an integrated healthcare system. That is not necessarily an integrated organization or integrated vendor or so on. It's integrated data in some way. And we also have to learn a little bit from our other countries. We have we have to develop also not just we have to have an innovative market, and Norway is a little small market, so we have to look outside, maybe develop this in a Nordic way, trying to work with the EU, the EHDS thinking. So we have so much to do, but we need this frame that the way we are going. And that is something we need to do now when the Helseformutvalget comes with their proposition.
Yeah. And you, Logan, Epic is working together with other vendors. You have some open standards. European health data space also requires that we can share data, that we can move them, that we can use them for research and so on and so on. Even that's a longer track, because it's like 27 countries who have to agree, and we only have to agree in Norway. So can you tell a little bit about the strategy of Epic around working together with other players?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on the European health data space, we have worked closely with the EU and then also with countries that are adopting EHDS to provide feedback and kind of help understand what the lessons learned, especially out of interoperability from the UK and then also from the US, and how we can build good systems that speak to one another and still allow good marketplaces for vendors to allow innovation. So we find that's very important. And then we've also, no one vendor can do everything, so even as large as we are. And so collaborating with partners is incredibly important, and building strong relationships. And we'll actually be going to Oslo, Bergen, and Trondheim in September and October, putting on labs about how you integrate and also how you can succeed in an international marketplace as well. Because we do think that there are some aspects of innovation in health and technology in Norway that are applicable elsewhere, and we want to kind of help make sure that others can be exposed to that, and that pathway to succeed internationally is there for people as well. So I think, you know, if I were kind of summarize, you know, the Helseformutvalget, which I did, in policy, we need to allow openness and agency for innovation, but provide an architecture that allows for that innovation ultimately, right? So we need to understand what role should the national systems play, what should private vendors play, what's the responsibility down in the municipalities and the hospitals, and not over-engineer those things with policy, and then give enough room and leadway for innovation really to take place and be able to expand that out further. But it starts from kind of in my mind, a good architecture of what we hope to gain from this at the end.
Okay, so to wrap up, I understand it is not an easy question, but try to find if each of you can shortly say what is the most important element if you want to succeed with integrated healthcare. That could be a word or a sentence or 2 sentences, but not much more than that.
Allow those that deliver the care and those that receive the care to be primary drivers for this. Too often it's top down. We expect a solution and it doesn't happen.
Okay.
And don't over-promise and under-deliver. That's a complete anathema. I mean, I'm a doctor, and you don't give optimistic, prognoses. You give honest, data-based prognosis. And too often in IT, we've over-promised and under-delivered.
Okay, interesting. Katarina?
Never forget the end user. Just get the change all the way out there, again and again and again, to make them understand what's hitting them.
Yes. And like Logan said, it's about, in Norway, we have to do this clearance of the roles, who's doing what, because now it's too many and it's too centralized. So do what we can do on the central level, but use the possibility to change where and the local needs, like you said.
Okay, Logan, last word for you.
I think I would say innovation takes time. I think we oftentimes say, okay, here's the new policy, here's the new guidance, go forth and make it happen, and we're going to measure you in the next year, right? And I would say outside of the university system, healthcare probably takes the longest to transform and actually see the benefits. And so we need to give time to let these policies and the new innovation grow before we come back and say whether or not it was a failure or a success, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Give a warm applause for